Hey, friends. Thank you for joining me. I've got a special treat for you today. Pete Garcia. We connected online, saw that he was friends with friends, and I thought I've got to reach out to Pete and get to know him. And so issued an invitation. He was kind enough to join me. So, Pete, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. First time. It's like I said before, it's we're coming in cold, so let's see how this goes. Let the Lord lead it, and we'll just go.
Yeah. Well, I like it that way. Let's just not have an outline or anything like that, and let the Lord lead us. So, you've got quite the ministry going on right now, and I know you're on YouTube and you post videos there quite frequently. Tell us a little bit about that as we get started.
Well, I started out writing for, I don't know if you ever met Jack and Sella, but Jack was the screenwriter for Hal Lindsey for a number of years, I think pretty much all through the 90s. And he started his own website in 2001, I think, with the Omega Letter. And I found that website around 2009. I had my come to Jesus. I grew up in the church, was born again as a child, and I grew up in the church. But then when I turned 18, I just drifted off and basically became the prodigal son. And it wasn't until 2007 that the Lord reined me back in. And so that next year, that was the fall of 2007. The whole next year, I was in Afghanistan, deployed over there, and I had come across Chuck Missler's book, Learn the Bible in 24 Hours. And I don't know how I found the book, but somehow it got in my hands, and or the Lord got it in my hands, and it lit a fire under me that's never gone out. So from there, I discovered the Omega Letter about a year later or so. And I really love Jack's ability to take a very complicated topic and just make it understandable for the average person. And so I became a big fan of his and the Omega Letter, and it was a really good community there, very tight. And by 2011, they invited me to write. And I think Jack initially had wanted me to write military stuff. And, at the time I had a top secret clearance. So I felt very, and this was during the Obama year. So this was like 2011, 2012. And I felt very, I was like, dude, I don't feel comfortable writing about that stuff. I said, I'll write about anything else except for that, but so I just started writing, and I told him, I was like, I've never written anything before, not like this. I'd written papers in college and I wrote stuff for the military, but I'd never written, just for the fun of it or for the calling of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And, here I am now. I don't even know how many I've written, 800 articles, 6 or 7 books. And so that lasted till about 2018, and we shut the website down because Jack passed, earlier. We kept it going for his wife, the widow, because it was a subscription based, and all of the writers, we just did it, to support her. So we did that for about 5 years, and then she was like, "Hey, you guys don't have to do that, and I don't want to feel like I'm holding you back." And so I ended up going on my own and started Rev310, which is my favorite scripture passage.
Yeah. And
then I started out on WordPress, and I hated it. I just, because it's all coding, and you gotta, I don't know, I didn't understand it. So around that same time, a buddy of mine was like, you should get on Patreon. And he was trying to explain Patreon to me. And I was like, you can do videos. And I was like, nobody wants to see my face on a video. Like, nobody wants to listen to me. And so I put it off, and I got Terry James reached out and ended up contributing to a bunch of his books. And then he and I did some books together. And then I got picked, or Jan Markell interviewed me, and then it just kind of blew up from there. And by, I guess, I don't know how many interviews I'd done, maybe like 20 or so. And then people kept asking for my channel, and I was like, I don't have a channel. And then finally I was like, I'll just make a channel. So I just started out, and, I think the one thing I'm most proud of is I did a whole series through Revelation. So I started Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, and I actually was disciplined. I am not the most disciplined person in the world, but like I made it all the way through, and every, I think it was Wednesday and Friday, we were doing 2 a week. I was able to get that done, and very proud of that. But yeah, I've been doing it YouTube now for a few years, and that my website, I ended up shutting down the one I had for the longest time, like 6 years, Rev310.net, and it was just getting too expensive, and I got spammed really hard because I was trying to make everything free, and then the Pakistani trolls or India, wherever they're from, they come in and just spam bot your website with ads and stuff, and I, after a few days of just deleting spam, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So Britt, I don't know if you know Britt. He'd been talking to me about coming over to Substack, and I was like, I don't want. So finally, I just did it. At that point, I decided to go to Substack, and I love it. So no complaints, and that's what
Substack's been very good for me too. It's so easy to use for one thing.
Yeah,
and
I love it too because if people, I didn't even know this at first, but if you write an article. And I know a lot of people like to read the articles, but a lot of times they don't get the time in the day to sit down and read a 2,000 or 3,000 word article, because I usually write pretty lengthy ones. But they can listen to it on audio, and it's just like one of the built-in features on the website. So I thought that was amazing. And then I can do videos for the subscribers, and they can come on camera with me, and we can just talk, have conversation. We can talk about, like last night, we just talked about whatever, and it ended up, Lee Brainerd jumped on a little bit later on. And then my buddy, John, I had him on the phone. And then, at one point we had like 4 people. I had 2, me and Lee on, and then Lisa was on. And then I had a friend of mine, Lisa, and then I had John on the phone here. So, this
was that
fellowship.
Was that the hoop cheese conversation?
Yeah. I didn't even know what hoop cheese. Yeah, she had to explain it to me. I was like, I don't know, what is that?
That's what I thought. I saw the title and I thought, what's hoop cheese? What does that even mean? So I listened to a few minutes. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So those conversations kind of go wherever, So and that's the Wednesday nights. But Monday nights, I usually do my Monday Night Live. And the only reason I do Monday nights is because 2.5 years ago. This is 2026, right? So this would have been 2022 timeframe. I met Lee for the first time, and then Lee introduced me to a guy named Tyler from Generation 2434, and he has. So I knew a lot of the guys that I knew were established ministries that had been around for a long time, and that's really all I knew. I didn't know there was this whole other side of YouTube where there's like these just the laymen, average watchwomen, and I didn't. Because it would never showed up on my algorithm. I never saw it. And so now I had 2 worlds that I was kind of going in and out of. And I had my Tom Hughes friends, and then I had my Barry Scarborough or Chooch or Tyler and these other guys that most of the established ministries don't know about. So it's been a weird dynamic. And I'm 51, so I'm 51, but I feel like I'm 41. And I probably think I'm 18 at times, and then the injury, the body kicks in. The body reminds you, like, hey, you're not 18 anymore. So, But yeah, it's been great, and it's just kind of grown from there. And I don't know, I just come on every week, and I try to be consistent. But what I was saying about all those guys is, we on a group chat, we kept stepping on each other's live streams every night. So we just decided everybody pick a night. And we'll try to respect that, the best we can. And so I just nobody had picked Monday night. I was like, I'll just do Monday night, and it's just kind of been that way ever since. So
that's pretty cool, actually. You got together and figured that out in the group, said, hey, let's try to respect each other's time. And that's pretty cool.
And we have a lot of the same audiences too. So, if Chooch is on, I want to go in and listen to Chooch and TOL, like Thinking Out Loud End Times. I want to go listen to him. Or Barry's on, I want to listen to him. Or Ty Green. Ty Green mostly pre-records this stuff, but all the guys, we just try to, support each other's ministries, and because try to show as much harmony as we can, because these times, I think I've talked about this a lot on my channel. The cone of confusion, that's aviation term, is you're flying in a plane, and you're flying instruments, and you're up at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet, and you're flying in the clouds, and you're following your CDI needle course deviation indicator, and it's pointing to the navigation aid on the airfield that you're flying toward, right? And as you get closer to that thing, man, it starts getting wobbly, it starts moving back and forth. And as you're going over that navigational aid, it starts spinning in all directions, right? Your to from flag is going back and forth. It's just going wonky. So you just have to keep that heading regardless of what the needle is doing. And I think we're in that time now where so much is happening prophetically. So much it's very stressful. So much is happening. And I see a lot of people burning out. And I've seen a lot of people burn out over the years, and I just try to be a steady voice and a calm influence on our community, and not try to get people super spun up or super spun down.
Yeah.
Just keep going, keep your head, fixed on Christ, and your gaze fixed on Christ, and don't let the craziness of our day-to-day world, with Trump and the politics and the Russia, Ukraine, and Iran and all the other stuff happening. It's too easy.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Great
it's too
advice.
easy to get sidetracked.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. And so, yeah, you threw some names out there. I'm going to have to track these guys down and check them out, because you're right. That's a whole nother world that I'm not even aware of. I'm, I know groups that I travel in and don't know anything about those. So I want to know. I'm interested in what, and I assume they're your age or maybe younger.
They're mostly younger. I think Barry's probably my age, but like Tyler's late 30s, I think. Chooch is.
I definitely want to check them out.
Yeah. No, they're good.
I know the younger guys. Yeah, for sure. So, combat vet, I know you're keeping an eye on world events, and you can't escape politics. You can try, but it's kind of that ubiquitous, ethereal. It's in everything, and it's everywhere, and it's that. I don't care if you're talking about the visible governments, the deep states, the bureau. It doesn't matter. It's all, well, we could call it theater, but it's all politics, and that's a horrible barometer to use when you're trying to discern truth, because my view is most politics is sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors, and you don't really know what these guys are up to. They'll tell you something, but that doesn't mean that's the truth. It might have a tinge of truth to it. Mm-hmm. There's typically some other motivations going on there. And what are your thoughts on that as in relation to world events? What can we trust beyond the scriptures, of course, but news sources, who can we trust?
Well, I'm not one of the guys. I know we probably share some friends that would say that the Republicans and Democrats are two wings of the same bird. I get the sentiment, and I kind of agree with the sentiment, but at the same time, we have to live here, and we have to live here until the Lord returns, and we don't know exactly when that's going to be. I believe we're in the season, but we don't know exactly. We're not going to know the day or the hour. We may not even know the month or year. Yeah. We have our theories, and everybody's got their own pet theory. I have mine. I'm sure everybody else has got theirs based on how they see Bible prophecy unfolding. But I think, well, let me back up. We know from Scripture that God appoints the kings and the leaders of the world. Acts 17:26, he sets and establishes the boundaries of nations, and they rise and fall at his decision to do that. And all that stuff's been foreordained. And I'm not a Calvinist or anything like that, but I think regarding the nations and things like that, and the structure and the flow of time and the flow of humanity toward its end state, I think God is still firmly in control of that. So when Trump came into office in 2016, obviously he's a destabilizer, and he's an accelerant in a lot of different facets, but God put him there. So I don't know him personally, but everybody that's ever met him has said he's the same guy that in person as you see on camera, as you see behind the scenes. And if you go back to the 1980s and go back and watch some of his early interviews with like Oprah Winfrey and different newscasts back then, he said the same thing. He's been saying the same thing all these years. So I don't really think he's changed. I think that God is using him now to speed things up prophetically in certain regards. And, obviously Satan knows that his time is coming short. And so who is he going to be able to build his beast kingdom? Who's going to be able to get the infrastructure in place faster? Him, like a Trump, or a Kamala Harris? So I think, and I don't know that it's Trump, and I'm pretty convinced that he doesn't know what he's building. I think he's still thinking that he can make America last for another 250 years. If he gets stuff set in place right now, he can make America great for another 100 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he truly believes, but it's a huge blind spot for him. And he's unfortunately surrounded himself with, his first time he had around, I think he had like Jack Hibbs and Pastor Jeffries and some others that had a good handle on Bible prophecy. But now he's got like Paula White and these other people that are just out there in left field. Plus he's got the technocrats, like Elon Musk and Bezos and all those guys now that are kissing the ring and basically selling them on this idea of, that we've got to establish artificial intelligence dominance first and quantum supremacy first before the Russians do or before the Chinese do. And they're using that fear of them getting ahead of us to drive him to make a lot of these decisions. But in reality, they're being driven by demonic entities, Satan or whoever, to build this beast kingdom, build the infrastructure for it.
Yeah, I think that's why very early on, could have been in the first month of his term, he announced that he was investing $500 billion into AI infrastructure. And a lot of people went berserk over that, but he told them why he was doing it. And it's exactly what you said. He said, somebody's going to win this race and it can't be China.
Yes,
that's what he said. And so in line with this, Pete, I ran across something today, and I actually grabbed a piece of it and posted it. And now I know why I ran across that and read that and posted, because I'm gonna read this, and then I want your thoughts on this. So, and this is from the IDI Center, the Ideological Defense Initiative. It says this. It says, the freedom the church enjoys in the West is the product of a civilization shaped by biblical convictions about human dignity, freedom of conscience, moral accountability, and limits on power. And then it references Genesis 1, Acts 5, Matthew 22. These foundations created societies in which the gospel could be proclaimed openly, churches could flourish, and the Great Commission could advance globally. That freedom is not self-sustaining. When theology is treated as irrelevant to public life, other ideological systems move to shape law, culture, and power in its place. Scripture is clear that belief forms conduct and institutions, and that ideas hostile to truth produce destructive outcomes over time. Defending the theological foundations of Western freedom is therefore not partisan politics, but an act of faithfulness. Withdrawal does not produce neutrality. It produces a vacuum that is filled by rival worldviews that reject the biblical understanding of the human person, authority, and justice. So the Ideological Defense Institute, that's the organization that posted this, exists to help the church understand these dynamics clearly and respond wisely. IDF equips churches to engage theologically and ideological challenges with clarity, to defend the biblical principles that made Christian freedom possible, to carry out the Great Commission more effectively through truth, discernment, and faithful witness grounded in love. So I read that and I thought, well, I can't find anything that I would object to in that. I think that as believers, certainly the ecclesias that we belong to, we should be engaged in at some level with the community, at least the community in which we live, and be making some kind of attempt through persuasion, through presence, through to shape those that are setting over us and making laws. So What are your thoughts on that, Pete?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me that at the most prophetically charged time since Christ's first coming that mankind's ever seen, most of the Christendom is either asleep at the wheel or is completely tone deaf to what's happening every day. I attended a good church here that's, I would say is biblically sound. But even on the day after we launched military action into Iran, the church never mentioned it. It just wasn't brought up at all. And I just thought, wow, this is like hugely prophetic. This is hugely important. And the church is not saying anything about it, not even a peep of it. So maybe in the Sunday schools, I don't know. But and I think that that is we bought into this lie of the separation of church and state for so long that most Christians today don't even want to talk about theology or eschatology or anything else the minute they step out of the doors of the church. It's like, Sunday, let's go eat, let's go watch football, let's just go back to whatever we're doing for the rest of the week. And it's sad, but I knew that Christ knew this, and Christ first saw this, in the 7 letters. I think those spell out the order that they're put in. I think that they kind of showcase the church over the last 2,000 years, and we're in this kind of Laodicean. That's the predominant kind of face of Christendom throughout, most of Western civilization.
Yeah. So
I do think that most of the church today is not ready for the Lord to return. They're not watching.
Right.
Now, I commend this organization for wanting to bring in, because apologetics is a huge. You get all the polls that you've seen, all the polls I've seen. Yeah. Kids go to church all their whole life, and then by the time they're 18, they never darken the door of a church again, or they go to college and their professor convinces them that Christianity is evil, and next thing you know, they've got purple hair and they're Marxist or whatever, So I think the church, there's an abundance of churches. There is the famine. They're starving for the word. Yes. With all these churches out there, people are starving for the word. And I think that if churches had done what they were called to do, there wouldn't even be a need for people like me on YouTube or the other watchmen and watchwomen out there that are proclaiming the Lord's soon return. So if the churches were doing their jobs, we wouldn't need to be on there, but they're not. And so this door is open. And just like in Revelation, I think it's 3:8, the door when Christ says, there's an open door that no man can shut. And if I shut it, no man's going to open it. And I think this is one of those times where he's opened this door on social media and has allowed the gospel to go out around the world. On my live streams and stuff, we have people from all over, and I don't know how many who watches it on the backside, but if I go back and look at the list of nations where it's being watched, I mean, you can see it's all over the world. So God has got this open door right now, and it's a privilege to be able to. I am so happy that I'm premill, dispensational, believe in the preacher of rapture. Like, I'm so happy that I am in the right biblical mindset. I mean, I could have been sucked into some kind of like post-millennial thing, like, the dominionist or NAR or Amill or preterist or some other type of, so anyways, I think it's a good idea. I don't, maybe a little too late at this point, but we'll see. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love your comment about apologetics. That it was all the rage about 25 years ago, and a lot of churches were hyped up about it, and I saw them offering apologetics, teaching through what it means, but then it just kind of, like so many other things that seemed to move through the church, it just kind of died out. And I thought how sad that is, because it should actually be an integral part of the ministry of the church. It doesn't mean you have to offer classes or courses that are apologetically oriented, but it should be part of the teaching ministry of the church. It should be your Sunday sermon should be saturated with apologetics in the sense that you're explaining what the scripture says. You can make application to what's happening today, but you're also equipping your people to answer those questions that they're going to be faced at work, at school, wherever these things are going to pop up. And it's very easy to do. So I don't understand why churches aren't doing it. I guess that's.
Well, I think, Lee and I were talking about this last night on my Substack Live. We had the Left Behind series came out, Tim LaHaye's, the fiction books, but you have Tim LaHaye behind driving the theology, which, is going to be on point. And right at the end of that run of those books, what came out is like Rick Warren's, Purpose Driven Church. And then you have the Andy Stanleys, and these guys come out and they bring in bad theology, and it just kills it. It kills the spirit. And now they're more focused on, most churches are now focused on butts and seats and counting noses and what can I teach what can I preach this Sunday that is going to be loved and popular, and it's not going to drive everybody away from the church. And so then you get into the whole tickling ears thing that Paul mentions, in his scripture. So I think that Satan is always looking to counteract the move of the Spirit. And when apologetics takes off, or when anything takes off, I mean, look at Kirk Cameron. I mean, the dude was like paired up with in the Way of the Master.
Yeah,
I can't remember the other guy's name from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Anyways, he has a rock solid foundation. And then now he's drifted from there since then. But now he's like, I don't even know if hell exists anymore. Like, I mean, like, that is so commonplace now that I don't know. It's just it's another sign of the times. People are just falling away.
Kind of reminds me. See, I'm older, so I remember some of these guys that came before, and sort of reminds me of Rob Bell's, fall. And I mean, he flamed out in a hurry, and that was a big turn he made.
Yeah.
Concerning hell, and of course that's been a few years ago now. But speaking of theology, one of the things that I heard today, I wanted to get your take on it. If you've heard it, if you've given any thought to it. But I was listening to a short clip that Joel Richardson did today. I think it was on X, and he was speaking about the current Israel-U.S. conflict with Iran, and then he said that, and I knew this already, Shia Muslim theology. I understand what they teach, and it's remarkably similar to Christian dispensational theology, only in the reverse. And so he was talking about, he said their theology describes a personage that they call the Imam al-Mahdi. I've just always called him the Mahdi. They're trying to create chaos and conflict. That's part of their theology, so that the Mahdi will return. Mahdi being their savior. But anyway, Shia Muslims believe in this personage that they call the Imam al-Mahdi, who they believe was an 8-year-old boy that disappeared about 1,000 years ago. And they believe that Allah is protecting and safeguarding the Mahdi, and that the Mahdi is ruling over the earth right now. He has sovereign rule over the earth, and that the Ayatollah is the earthly steward of the Mahdi's divine government. So the point being that by the U.S. and Israel taking out the Ayatollah, and from the latest I've heard, his son is now incapacitated in some sense, maybe even in a coma, I've heard. But again, but taking the Ayatollah out, the earthly representative of the Mahdi, that's going to create some severe repercussions if they hold to their theology. In other words, they're not going to stop attacking and terrorizing because they're being driven by this theology and this belief that the Mahdi is going to come back and set everything right. Have you heard this?
Yeah. I kind of look at the Shia as kind of like the Roman Catholic version of Christianity, where the Ayatollah is like the Pope. So the Pope is, they hold to a amillennial theology, so they don't believe in a literal kingdom, a 1,000-year kingdom. Christ is currently ruling and reigning from heaven, and the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is ruling from the earth. So if you're ruling from the earth, you need somebody to lead that organization, which is why you have the Pope, who is the vicar of Christ, and that he is ruling Christ is ruling vicariously through the Pope. So that's the same regard with Shia and the Ayatollah. And I would look at the Sunnis, which are the majority. I would look at them more as the dominionist, where they feel like they have to conquer the world first, for Christ or for Allah, in order for their end time paradise to begin. So that's why they're both so dangerous in different regards. But yeah, I think that I think within the IRGC and the besieged, you probably have some real hardliners that are true believers.
Yes.
That are going to fight to until they die. But I think probably the majority of them are not. They're probably just there for a paycheck, or they're there because, that was a job they had to do, et cetera. So you have a lot of those folks, defecting, and depending on how much progress the Kurds make coming in through the northwest, out of Kurdistan and Iraq, and what kind of pressure we continue to put on them. I think if we take like this Karg Island, which is where Iran sells all of its oil, gets all their money from, if we take over that, I saw today I don't know if it's Mossad or IDF, one of the two, is flying their drones at almost a street level, and they're able to take out all these besieged checkpoints and stuff with these drones. So in fact, I was talking to somebody about that the other night. I don't know if it was I think it was on a live stream, but I thought, we don't have to put boots on the ground in order for us to really kind of take over that nation, because 20 years ago, we didn't have the technology wasn't there, with Iraq and Afghanistan, you had to have boots on the ground. But now, we got drones, surveillance satellites. I mean, we got so many different AI. There's so many different things you could do now that you don't need to put boots. You might have to put small teams in, like Delta Force or Special Forces or whoever, but you don't need to put the 101st Airborne or the 82nd or anybody else there. So I think people are still thinking back to the Iraq War and Afghanistan. I mean, technology is advanced so fast now that we won't have to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the reports that I read, again, who really knows? And the ones that do know, are they really going to tell us the truth anyway? But the report that I read said that Israel was receiving intelligence from Iranian citizens that were calling in the places where these checkpoints were at, and like you said, they were being systematically eliminated. I would think. I mean, I served in the military, although it was 40 some years ago. I wouldn't really be too keen on reporting for duty at a checkpoint if I knew that the last 10 or 12 guys that went to that were taken out. So maybe that's a key. Break the morale of the ones that aren't the true believers, and that's going to be part of the strategy to end this thing. What's fascinating. A lot of people have asked, well, let's just say that the Reza Shah Pahlavi comes back in to lead some transitional government or whatever, and how does that line up with Ezekiel 38? Since they could even sign some kind of Cyrus Accords or something where Iran and under the Shah and now the Iranian people are willing to make some kind of a peace deal with Israel specifically, but then they may join the Abraham Accords and so on and so forth. I think that the hardliners
the true believers, they may end up moving east and fleeing to Afghanistan or some other place for the time being. But when the rapture does happen, and in the U.S., in my opinion, I don't know where you stand on this, but I believe that the rapture happens. The U.S. is in a state of chaos, martial law, because it's going to be a very chaotic moment for the United States. And then that chaos is going to spread economically throughout the world as the markets start to shudder, and alien ships could be showing up at the same time, just to confuse people. And so I think at that point, Erdogan will probably lead or blast the trumpet call for a crusade to liberate the Holy Lands from Israel, and the U.S. won't be a factor at that point, because we'll be too busy, or not we, but they will be too busy hunkering down and trying to get control back of places that it's now been given over to gangs and criminals, and just the general chaos of what would follow. And at that point, you're going to have those hardliners marching from and through Iran, and the Christians from Iran. There's a many that have come to faith in recent years. So those will all be gone. What you're going to be left with are really the Shia, the Shia Muslims. They're going to march alongside the Sunni Muslims coming out of the Stan nations, coming out of the north, out of Chechnya, Dagestan, out of Europe, coming out of Africa, from Libya and Sudan and probably Somalia and everywhere else. So it's going to be coming from all directions. And at that point, God's going to supernaturally deliver Israel, and at the same time, neuter, and I mean that in a very literal sense, neuter militant Islam. It won't even be a factor after Gog and Magog. They'll still be Muslims, but it's not going to have the same effect that geopolitical effect that they've had for the last 100 years or so. So I see that happening, and so I do agree with Joe Richardson on a lot of things. I think I don't know if he's post-trib or something, but I think eschatologically we probably differ on some stuff. But a lot of other things I do think that he's pretty spot on.
Yeah. Joel, I consider him a friend and have had him on the show a number of times. But we do not agree on the tribulation. I think he's pre-wrath. I'm pre-trib.
Oh, yeah, maybe that.
Yeah. I was going to say we agree on a lot, but we don't agree on that. So,
yeah.
but Joel is a brother, and he doesn't let those things come between us and ministry, and so that's a very good thing. So So I got asked today, Pete, about Jeremiah 49. I was talking with it was Olivier. Was talking with him today, and so he asked me about that, because that's all the rage right now, in our circles, and where we're at with that and what we think. And I said, well, I grew up in the Hal Lindsey days, and when eschatology was pretty much understood in a certain way, and now we're getting some different viewpoint, and that's all. That's good. I don't have a problem with that at all. But Jeremiah 49 seems pretty clear to me, and that the bow is broken. Now, will they be reconstituted at some point? Well, I don't know, but those verses that, especially the last two verses in that chapter, that talk about God establishing his throne there, that seems to me to be talking millennial time period.
Yeah.
And so to transfer that into the time leading up to and incorporating the tribulation, I guess I haven't heard a strong enough argument yet for that. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got about 50% of my ministry friends that's all in the past, and the other 50 are like, no, this is happening now, or it's still future. So I tend to lean toward future fulfillment, although I would admit to say that I'm probably not as strong. I don't believe that as fervently and as assuredly as I would say that, Daniel 9:27 still future. Like I absolutely 1,000% believe that still future.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the breaking of the bow of Elam, and certain people, teachers, friends of mine, make good points about this is the past fulfillment, and then others are saying, well, it looks like it's happening right now. Again, that goes back to the whole cone of confusion, where the needle's spinning everywhere, and it's hard to say this is that, and speak definitively. But I don't know. I probably lean toward it still being future with the last two verses, like you mentioned, with the throne being there. But I do believe that is in the millennial kingdom. Yeah. And we know that the day of the Lord, I at least I understand it. The day of the Lord is both a singular day, and it is also a general reference to the time period, a general type that's at least 1,007 years long.
Yes.
So I think there's what we're seeing right now is a lot of groundwork being established prior to the beginning of the day of the Lord, which I think the rapture kicks off, which we would call that the day of Christ. And I think in 2 Thessalonians 2, some translations have it day of the Lord, some have it day of Christ.
Yeah.
But I think that would signal the rapture. And then the 70th week doesn't officially start until Daniel 9:27. So however long away that is, you call that a gap in time, but I would think probably a year or so. I don't know, somewhere in that neighborhood, but enough time for the nations to get back control of the streets and get back control of their military assets and arsenals. But there was something about Jeremiah 49 that did strike me odd the other day. I was listening to some Israeli podcasters talking about the U.S. mission right now. In the IDF, I guess, or IAF, going through and taking out all the mobile launchers, and they were calling the launchers the Archers. And I don't know if that's the name of the mobile missile launchers that the Iranians use. Like, I don't know what the name of what they call it, but the Israeli guys were calling it Archers. So these things were slinging missiles, like a bow in a way. And so now we've gone through and I think we've destroyed probably 95% of them. I mean, their missile volleys have been considerably reduced in the past few days. So I think the fear is that a lot of people have is that we're going to be able to take out all the ICBMs and take out all these drone launches and things like that. But then how do you secure the city without putting boots on the ground? And again, we have the technology now that we didn't have 20 years ago or even 15 years ago. And I don't think we're going to need to put boots on the ground. And I do honestly believe that Iran will get pacified in some way, shape, or form, and they will be party to this Abraham Accords. And I think the rapture is very, very soon. And then in that instance, the second the rapture happens, it's going to be too big an opportunity for the Muslim world to pass that up. And so I think Erdogan is going to see that at his time to make his move, and he's going to do the clarion call for everybody, and they're going to come marching. And the Taliban will come riding on our the MRAPs and everything we left them back in 2021. So
yeah, that sounds like a very likely scenario. Pete. Very likely. One other topic I want to touch on before we go, and it's everywhere, and that's artificial intelligence. It those that have wrote the biggest checks to create the framework and start building it up have been saying for at least the last year or more that it is already out of control.
Yeah.
That there is no turning back now. Just on a purely economic side, I continue to read almost every week that this company or that company is laying off thousands of people because AI is going to begin. In fact, I just read an article a day or so ago that the Pentagon of all organizations, said that it is going to begin incorporating artificial intelligence. And the way they described it was to do the menial tasks that the Department of Defense is responsible for now. So when I read that, I looked at my wife, Kathy, and I said, oh, what could possibly go wrong with artificial intelligence having access to the Pentagon Department of Defense records and doing menial tasks? I don't see that turning out good at all. What are your thoughts?
Back in the 1990s, there was a guy named Curtis Yarvin who was, he was a fairly prolific writer, underground writer for Technocracy. And he put forth this document. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but Elon Musk, JD Vance, others have kind of subscribed to this idea of basically allowing a technocratic, a technocracy to run the super state, because we've basically gotten to the point in human nature where we are inefficient, we are corrupted, we are too biased, we are, there's so many flaws with the condition of mankind today writ large that we're never going to get out of the problems that we're in until we make this change. So when Trump won the second time, or I guess the third time, and you kept hearing them talk about efficiency, I heard that so much. The DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Well, this Curtis Yarvin guy was all about this efficiency and how we need to hand over a lot of the government to AI in order to. And so here's my thought on this, is that we're going to see AI continuing to have this exponential rise in compute power and processing. Even I saw the other day on X, they had taken 200 neurons out of a brain and put it in like this petri dish, and they got that thing to play a video game. It started off playing Pong in 2022, and then it's playing this game called Doom. I played Doom when I was growing up, and it's a first-person shooter game. And these little neurons, they taught those neurons in a petri dish how to play, and the human brain only requires about 20 watts to operate of electrical power, and they're having these huge data centers that are taking megawatts to run it. So energy is a big thing. Water, because these data centers take a huge amount of water and power, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see where the mark of the beast is. Eventually, the two are going to come together, and they're going to put that technology into the human body. We've already got several big companies, Synchron and then Elon Musk Neuralink, are making leaps and bounds with the human trials that they've already been conducting. So I really think that the mark of the beast, of all the things that we're seeing, all the shiny, pretty things out there and all the AI, robots and all that, the creme de la creme of human technology is going to be wrapped up in this mark. Whatever this mark is, if it's a quantum dot tattoo or some type of technology we haven't seen yet. And I talk about this a lot, but in the 90s, I don't know, you probably had these conversations with a friend over coffee in the 90s, think back to early 90s or whatever. What were you thinking the mark of the beast was going to be? Some kind of UPC barcode kind of thing, or maybe an RFID chip when that first came out. And so now the technology is to the point, it's not that we can't imagine it happening. Now our problem is there's so many different ways it could. There's so many different kinds of technology it could be. We don't know which one it's going to be. But we know it's coming, and we know eventually that they're going to keep making these connections back to the human body. And look how much the CIA, intelligence agencies, DIA, and the rest have found that the human body can store immense amounts of data. And just like our pinky, just like a little millimeter of our pinky could store, gigabytes and megabytes and all this other stuff, not megabytes, but, terawatts and terabytes and all that data. And that's just like a little portion of your pinky that could do that. Imagine what your whole body, they're going to keep going with this in this vein, and they're going to put the best of the best into this mark. And it's going to be able to do so many different things for the human that it's going to be very irresistible for people to not want to take it. And then, like everything else that's government run, it always starts out as a suggestion. and then it's kind of strongly encouraged, and then it becomes enforced by law, and then it becomes enforced by pain of death. So that's kind of the progress that this mark's going to go. So I think AI is definitely speeding that up. And I read years ago that in 2020, because of the lockdown, that forced the technology companies, whether you're talking about telecommunications or internet or software developers, everything else, that sped us up by like 6 years. So if COVID had never happened, we would just now be getting to where we were in 2020, in terms of where we are with the band. Now we're working on 6G bandwidth, and AI is definitely out of the embryonic stage. Now it's almost, I would say it's getting either right at, or maybe it's even crossed into AGI territory, where it's going to keep accelerating. That timeline is going to keep accelerating faster and faster and faster. So I think AI is going to play a critical role in the development of the mark of the beast, because ultimately that's what Satan needs to happen in order to control the world and to control all buying and selling. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And just I'm always more, because there's so much within AI you could look at. I kind of always I'm very drawn into like wetware and how the human body factors into putting technology into it. So that's the one area that I really like to focus in on. And we're almost there. I don't think it would take much. And I would even say after the rapture, I look at the Holy Spirit and his role as the restrainer over the last 2,000 years. Is not only has he been restraining evil writ large from totally dominating the planet, but he's also restrained mankind from advancing too quickly, which is why we would have a Michelangelo here, but not, Michelangelos everywhere, or Da Vinci's, or, think of the geniuses out, Einstein's and so forth. So he limits some people, he gives that the ability, I think, to use their whole brain, or use their brain in a way that most people can't. Yeah. But he sprinkles those people throughout time, God does. And so it advances man at this pace that is commensurate to, that aligns with his timeline. But I feel like AI is changing that balance, and we're going back to the days of the, Genesis 11, where God makes that statement that if mankind is united in purpose and language, there's not anything they can't accomplish. And so we're seeing that now. We've seen it over the 20th century for sure, but it's really taken off, in the last, 5-10 years.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly where my mind went as you were talking about that. It's like, the devil's trying to take us back to Babel, bring us all together and accelerate this in order to defeat. Yeah. So, well, Pete, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Let's do it again soon.
Anytime.
Because there's always something that needs to be discussed and dissected from a biblical point of view, which is what we try to do. So where can people get a hold of you at? What's the best places? I know you're on Substack, you're on YouTube. Where else?
Yeah, if they just go to my YouTube channel, any of my programs that I do, I'll in the description underneath the title or whatever, if they expand that, all my contact information is there. But it's YouTube, it's going to be Rev310, or just type in my name. It's either, if they type in Pete Garcia, it's either going to be me or this really fat Mexican guy that was like some kind of a sports guy in Mexico or something. I don't know who he was. We're the only two that kind of pop up that way. And then a Substack, so Rev310 on Substack. I think it's rev310substack.com. It's a pretty long address, but yeah, so I'm either of those locations they can find me at. So
okay, and friends, if you're in the Las Vegas area, then you can see Pete, Tom Hughes, Billy Crone, John Haller, Kurt Reed. Did I miss anybody, Pete? I think that's all of them.
Yeah, I think there's 4 of them.
Okay, the Calvary Chapel Harvest Life next weekend, 20th through 22nd. Pete and the rest of those brothers will be there. It would be worth your time to go, and if you can't make it, they do have live stream. So
Yeah.
go to the Harvest Life website, find that, register for that. Pete, I appreciate you and your ministry and what the Lord's done, and our conversation today. And we'll do this again soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Friends, that's all we've got for you in this episode. We appreciate you sharing this on your platforms. Send the link to your friends, family. Perhaps they've been having conversations about these things. Send it to them and help them to understand what's going on in our world today. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time.